All right, we're live. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Give me some thumbs up in the comments if you can hear us, if the audio is good. It's weird is that overlay is not right. As soon as you add it, it goes gray. Anyway, all right. So we are live with Southern Indiana Whitetail Talk. We're super excited to be back. Tonight we have Darren Ballard. We got Landon Roberts, which is taking Cody's place because unfortunately Cody couldn't be here tonight due to work.
That's right.
Right. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, we have Jason Van Meter, the one and only Jason Van Meter, right?
Yeah, right.
I'm pretty much just going to kind of sit back and let these guys discuss a lot of different whitetail topics. I know Jason's got a lot of stuff to go over about whitetail food, habitat. Landon's got some notes also that he'll probably be going over. And then Darren's got some stuff he'll be going over. So like Jason and I have said before, this is kind of more of an informational show, that type of stuff. So, and questions and comments are welcome, right?
That's right.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Questions and comments are welcome. So
I guess they can hear us.
Yeah.
The audio's good.
Sam Geip said thumbs up.
All right.
So,
good deal. I'm not getting any of that on here, but that's all right. All right. Yeah, I see it now. All right. Well, it's good to have everyone out tonight, and I appreciate Landon stepping on board with us, helping us out tonight. And I told him, I said, this may not be your first or your last.
Right.
So, or your last, rather. Good to have Darren. Sorry, Cody can't be with us tonight. He's working a lot of overtime.
Good to be here.
And we're just going to talk about deer tonight. I know everybody's getting geared up and ready for it. I appreciate all the business that we've had through the shop and the website. Appreciate all that. I know it's going to get very busy coming up here in October, but we just appreciate everything. Appreciate Paul Walterzak building our website for us, and I feel like it's pretty easy to navigate through. But let's get right on into it tonight. I know Landon, he is just full of a lot of good information. He's one of my go-to guys whenever I'm in a tight spot trying to figure out deer. I'll call Landon, Cody, and Darren, and some other guys too as well. But it's good to have Landon with us. But tonight, I just want to get right into talking about deer. I want to talk about deer. I want to talk about habitat, certain kind of foods and different things. I know probably the next podcast we'll dive right into scrapes and different things like that. But I'm sure we'll talk about that again tonight as well. But I want to start off with deer habitat. And if you have any questions, just pipe in. But I wrote down a few notes today while I was thinking about how deer are actually just prey animals. Prey animals. They hide, they eat, they drink, and they breed. That's their life, and that's the structure of their life. But I think of them being prey animals is what makes them so hard to hunt and to figure out. And I think of being a preyed over animal. It's from the beginning. From fawn predation all the way into the mature life of a whitetail, whether it be the predator of a hunter or even cars and trucks. But I think of how the whitetail being a preyed animal, it really develops their behavior, their lifestyle, and their structured areas where they would prefer to live. But I think of a few things that I want to talk about tonight, and anybody enter in at any time. But I don't see any questions. There you go. I think of deer food, what they eat, what they like to eat. I think of how it interacts daily, and how these whitetail, if we can understand their feeding patterns, if we can understand what they really want to eat, I think it betters our odds to figuring out their pattern of their lifestyle to be able to harvest. But I think of some of the deer that I've watched over the years when they come through a browse area, how they'll cherry pick just high quality foods. And these deer, you've heard me say it before, you've heard a lot of people say it, that they'll eat 5 times in a 24-hour period. And that's 3 times at night and usually twice in their bedding during the day. But good mature buck habitat that I want to talk about tonight is high quality browse. I know a lot of guys put out food plots, and that's good. That's fine. Like Matt will always say, to each their own. But myself, I like a habitat for mature deer to be able to live and browse and bed and do a lot of their daylight activities in something that's 4.5 to 5.5, 6.5 foot tall. And I like to call that a feed screen. If you look there on the screen right there, feed, I don't know, I just thinking today, food screen, feed screen. And these whitetail, especially these mature bucks, they'll eat while they watch for predation. We can't see them, but they can see us. It's like a screen, if you will. But I think if a lot of guys would pay attention to more habitat like that when you pursue these mature bucks, it'll outdo your everyday put in the ground by seed food plot.
Mm-hmm.
How, Jason, what are you seeing as far as how close to the bedroom is that, on average, like, when you're going in and you're seeing that type of habitat, how close to the bedrooms are you?
That is within probably a lot of times 100 yards. And sometimes they'll even bed in that if the cover is high enough. But I got just fine example. I was coming down the highway the other day, or the interstate the other day. And for anybody that lives in Southern Indiana, they have quit brush hogging, especially up and down 64 next to the Hoosier National Forest.
Mm-hmm.
And you always hear about people saying, man, I seen a big buck right on the side of the interstate. Well, that's its food plot.
Mm-hmm.
Inside of that national forest where a lot of guys like to hunt on public, they'll bust in there and they'll go a half a mile. I went 2 miles. Well, you've done busted through his bedding and probably spooked him when he's really only about 200 yards off the interstate. Because anything like those big open story woods, like a lot of the public land is, they don't offer much food to begin with. But I've noticed here lately on the sides of the interstate where a lot of guys hunt public, if Matt would put it back up there, actually one of them pictures is off the interstate. That one's off the interstate. You'll see that deer right there hit that food plot right before dark, right after dark. So he may only be bedding in there another 200, 300 yards.
Mm-hmm.
But
he's not far.
How many times on average, though, do you see a guy go in to prepare a food plot or something in the middle of this, and then they'll just flatten it all, and then you have browse around the edge, and they're going in there and they're raking all that out, and then they're just taking it, like it's, supposed to be a walking trail or something. And, I think a lot of people,
You're spraying all the good stuff.
Yeah, right. But I think a lot of times diversity is your best friend. I mean, when I think of putting in a food plot or anything, I try to keep as my options open for the deer. So I think that's a common mistake, and sometimes an overlooked thing is you don't get rid of the honeysuckle, don't get rid of the don't get rid of the briar.
Yep.
So,
right. Well, I know browse is staple, along with forbs, meaning that non-woody wildflower that's got a lot of stem count in it with a lot of water. There's a lot of moisture in that. But deer, they got to balance that diet to begin with. Say like that mature buck, he's been inside that bedding all day long, and he's been walking around doing some browse, woody tips, maybe acorns, just more dry substance to where once he can break free from that to get his water source, it'll be in some of the forbs that's found in the wild, whether it be, it could be aster, it could be, pokeweed. I mean, it's full of water. If you've ever taken a poke branch or poke stalk and just broke it over, it's just full of water. But a lot of guys don't realize is when they, like Landon said, when they clean that up, they're destroying a free God-given food plot. It is.
Right.
And that's the type of food plot that I like to be a part of. And I was reading somewhere where a lot of these big open story public land wood lots, you can see for 50, 75 yards, they only hold maybe, what is it, Landon, 100 pounds of food per acre or less.
Yeah, it's not much at all. and I know a lot of people, you know, especially when they go in and, you know, they might want to do timber stand improvement or something, and they go through and they're looking through their woods. You know, a lot of people, and I'm the same way, you know, I'm guilty of it. It's like you want to go in and you want this park setting to where, you know, you like this nice open,
Right.
you know, floor, and, you know, or you might like a bunch of pines that are, you know, just covered in needles. Well, that literally offers the deer nothing. I mean, there is no nutritional value in anything through there.
Right.
And so that's why you see a lot more of these people, you know, being more proactive about, you know, doing, you know, timber stand improvement and hinge cutting and different things like that to help a lot of this, you know, undergrowth really take off, and you're creating a lot of good bedding as well. So
Right.
It's a good habitat for sure.
Darren, what do you say about
Most of my food, I didn't start putting any plots out till 5-6 years ago. I think I mentioned that last year. But the ones that I have out are close to power lines.
Mm-hmm.
They're not in the woods,
mm-hmm.
or they may be on the edge of a finger of a field that I know where the bed or where the deer are traveling back and forth. I try to plant my plots close to a transition place where the deer are browsing back and forth, or if there's a lot of natural browse, I try to stay out of that. I don't try to plant too close to that, you know, your natural browse and everything. But most of mine, the food plots that I have out are basically right on the power lines.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back to Landon's comment here real quick. So if you acquire a new piece of property and there is nothing, right? It's just wide open, looks like that park setting, and you're wanting to plant a food plot, are you better off to get a mix of the plants that you're discussing, Jason? Or because, you know, a lot of guys will just buy a throw and grow or whatever, just clover or anything like that. Are we better off to try to make that thicket in that food plot?
I mean, to each their own. Myself, I don't want a well manicured food plot. I mean, unless I want to watch a bunch of deer at nighttime. You got to have edge. You got to have an island. You got to have something for these mature deer to be able to screen themselves with. If I was in that situation, I would just let it grow up. I know a lot of guys like to burn. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't, because I'd have the whole place on fire. So I'm going to stick.
I'm the same way.
So I'm going to stick with a little brush hogging and then just let everything seed itself and reseed itself. But myself, I would rather just let something like that grow up. If you can get somebody in there professionally to burn your plot, I believe it'd be all the better.
Right.
Because once you burn something like that and then all those seeds regenerate, you'll get a lot of different habitat. And that's the thing. You got to have the diversity of habitat. You just can't have a field full of tall fescue. You just can't have a field full of just like this, I call it wild pampas grass. It may be a form of switchgrass or some kind of tall grassy, but I like to see a lot of ragweed. I like to see a lot of greenbrier. I like to see the whole, just a variety of all that. I know where Landon hunts too. He's talked about some willows. You know, that's powerful. I mean, they love to rub on it. They love to eat it. But you know, wild grapes, ironweed, goldenrod, pokeberry weeds, blackberries, wild aster. That's just like last year. Right before I shot that deer last year, I watched him just strip all the little tender, what was left over green shoots off of wild aster. And, you know, I was watching him at about 15 yards do this. And I thought, man, he is just browse as he was walking by. But I think food plots have their spot. I'm just going to say it like this. Don't hunt on your food plots. Or I won't, unless you've got this exit and entry where you're not spooking anything.
Absolutely.
Right. So
I think that's the big key to food plots in general is entry and exit. Because I mean, what's the point of planting a food plot and then walking all the way down along the edge of it?
You know, if you don't have that planned out, you're wasting your time.
Yeah,
you have just literally wasted your time.
That, and so many people just get caught up in, you know, I want to sit on the food plot. I want, you know, it's so pretty, you know, and you know, that's great, but how many times does your target deer come out after dark? You know, you've got to try, and that, you know, I think that's part of growing as a hunter is you have to understand and knowing your property. You know, I understand. You know, I've hunted the same property for years and years, and I'm still finding buck bedding areas. You
Right.
know, and I've walked every inch of my property, but I still think part of the learning curve is figuring out where your deer are bedding, and then you obviously know where they want to go. So, you know, you have to, you know, set yourself up for success by trying to find that transition area and trying to, you know, and trying to get in there, you know, with the wind being right. Like you guys said, entry and exit's so big, but, you know, so many guys, as a common mistake, just want to come in and just dive right onto that food plot. And I just, you know, I would much rather be in that little browse line, or, you know, that transition area where they're, you know, they're scooting, you know, through that, you know, you're still going to see them on their feet, you know, daylight.
And that's basically what Gail Combs was saying there. Like Landon was saying, the corridors, the traveling.
Thickets.
Yes. I tell you what, a lot of guys underestimate and never do this, never underestimate that 1 to 3 acre thick patch of whatever it is. An island, a finger thicket. I mean, them big mature deer, they'll get in that and they'll bed in that and they'll live in that and they'll eat in that all day long. When so many times we want to penetrate the timber and get right in the middle of our parcel because we feel like, hey, we've got everything covered because we're right in the middle of it.
It's easy to do.
It is. I know, like one parcel I have, it's over 400 acre parcel, and honestly, where I killed him last year, there is only one good way in and out of that farm, which only gives me about 1 or 2 little areas to hunt, and it's 400 acres.
Right.
But let me tell you, I wish somebody could drop me off with a helicopter in about 3 other spots.
Right. Just drop you in.
It let me hunt.
Yeah.
But that exit entry, these mature deer, they'll get into these little safe places, and it's all about this. I called it food screening or feed screen or cover screen, whatever you want to call it. You know, they can see out, but we can't see in. And there's so many times these big bucks or even layered doe families, they sit there and they watch us as we enter in or enter out, and them older deer just don't like it.
Well, what is the first thing you guys do if you're planning a plot? What's the first thing you're going to do?
You're going to figure out where the wind, you know, predominant wind's going to be at.
Second thing, where to set up according to where the deer are coming in at. It is vital. You got to have a little bit of distance between your setup and your plot.
Right.
But and I, like Jason said, that 1 to 3 acre place, I mean, that to me, I mean, that's key. That to me, that's the best place.
Right.
If you can find something like that on a parcel of property that will allow you to put a plot in there, there's where you're going to have your best success, from my opinion.
Right.
You know.
Right.
Well, I think too, though, you know, a lot of people, this whole management thing, and I don't know where it actually comes from, but a lot of deer management is like a 3-4 step process. And a lot of times these people, they'll clear an area, build a food plot, open some lanes, throw some mineral out, and a bait pile.
We're good.
Yep.
And they call it hunt. when actually on your entry and exit, you're really disturbing the whole herd. And it's just a humanistic mindset. We think, oh, this looks good. Well, before we think it looks good, we need to know where our deer bed, where they feed, where their water source is, and really learn their moment of travel all day long.
The whole picture, not just
Yes.
snippets of it.
You know, and like I said, we're not professionals at what we do. We're just giving you our honest opinion, because I can remember the first food plot I ever planted. It was a joke.
Yeah.
I had an acre and a half plot, and I did not think where to set up, put my stand location, and, you know, wind direction and how they were traveling. And all I did was run the deer out of that area. I mean, they, you know, scared them off.
I think a lot of times you can do more harm than you can good. Because a lot, you know, and a lot of times where you're putting these plots at, going back to Jason talking about natural browse, and that's being his perfect food plot. A lot of times you're mowing down more of that stuff and creating something that more than likely is just an annual, where the good Lord gave us all these free food plots. So
That's right.
Or you mow it all down, right?
Right.
And then you till it all up and you throw seed in the ground and you get a dry summer, none of it grows anyway. So then,
Like me.
then you just run
Yeah.
it all. So
You guys are talking about food plots, and my food plots
Depends
not
on
even
what you
germinated yet. So
Depends on what you
Uh,
grow. Mine,
yeah.
mine looks pretty good.
Really?
I gotta say.
That's
Oh, yeah.
good.
Tony wants to know, what's your opinion on white oak acorns this year, thick or spotty?
Well, I always go by what an old houndsman told me years ago, squirrel dogger. He said white oaks produce the most on even number of years, and you can go by that pretty regularly. But I have noticed some pretty good pockets of white oaks this year, where on and it's an odd number year, so they're out there. You just gotta go find them.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And they're falling. Some are starting to fall now, especially with this early drought or this drought that we're having. So
I've heard spotty in places from a lot of my older friends, and then I know a particular piece of property that I hunt. The white oaks look pretty good.
So it just depends on where you're at and the rainfall, pretty much what it boils down to.
but usually that bunker crop is usually an even number of
I've
years
heard that.
when they're just everywhere. So
Well, it only makes sense because last year, I mean, look at the oak trees. I mean, there was
Well-
plenty of acres.
well, it's just how the white oak, it's just how it works. They have a good season, or they have an on season, off season, and but the majority of the on is during that even number of year when more of your pin oak and your red oak and your black oak, the way they come off that limb, if you ever look at it, they've always got a bud a year behind already being produced. And you can look at that limb, especially on a black oak.
Mhm.
It's stages of every year, and you can a nice young tender limb branch. You can look at this year's fruit, and then you can see next year's. If you look real close down in, you can see where the next will be.
I got you.
And every year it just breaks off and makes new.
Brad wants to know what your guys' opinion is on hunting fence rows, because fence rows are a big travel corridor, right? I mean, they use a lot of fence rows. But Landon, I don't know. I mean, how many fence rows do you have?
we have
I
a
know,
lot.
I know fence rows are becoming like almost an obsolete thing anymore with,
Right.
because you don't see many fence rows anymore.
My favorite thing on fence row is a good fence, and then a place where it's flat or a break in the fence to where, I mean, deer are lazy. I mean,
Like an open gate,
yeah,
so to speak.
yeah. I mean, essentially, you're funneling deer down to a specific area, and I don't know how many times I've gone to fix fence on where a tree's came across the fence, and guess what? There's a
Where they
path
cross.
there,
Right.
and they're just like us. They want to get across the fence just
Yep.
as easy as us. So, but I don't know. These guys can share their
Deer will take the
thoughts on-
easiest trail. That's
Yeah.
for sure. I would compare fence rows, if this makes sense, to hunting power lines or edge thickets along power lines. I have seen more mature bucks in, I don't know, 15, 20 years, whatever, cruising during the rut. Those thickets and things like that, like fence rows along power lines. So I like power lines, and I like fence rows.
Oh yeah, it's edge, and that's what they want.
Right.
They want that edge cover.
That edge of cover.
And and you got to think about it. A fence is always built in a straight line.
Mm-hmm.
Straight line is least resistance.
Right.
And them deer, they're like Landon said, they're lazy, and they find a break. That's like me. I'll manipulate deer the way I want to by cutting a fence. Yeah, and you cut a woven wire fence, it's an open gate,
Mhm.
and they'll take it every time. So, but
Joe said that the acorns are falling like crazy in northern Ohio. Joe said, I've mowed past to my stands and had deer walk right to me, fall on that path, which is, I mean, it's a pretty good tool to use. I mean, especially if it's kind of thick in there just to get you a path to your stand, they're going to use it.
Probably had a lot of rain there too.
Yeah.
So
Yale said most times hunting pressure, weather, and moon phase plays this on deer movement.
Yeah, I really hunt by the weather. I really, really do.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, I don't even watch the news, Jason, not to interrupt.
yeah,
I just watch it for your Facebook post to see
Yeah.
what the weather's going to do.
well, hopefully this
with,
year.
with Jason being the stand this coming Tuesday.
Yeah, well, hopefully I'll be able to do that again this year. I want to add something about weather and cold fronts. Of course, we all like that first big cold front, or any big cold front, especially there in October, gathering around Halloween. But last year when I was hunting that deer there, it was 70 degrees in the day and 40 at night, and I almost let the daytime temperatures keep me from hunting the morning that I killed him, because it was like 73, 74, and it was sunny, bluebird skies the day before, the day of the harvest. But I got to thinking about that. I thought, well, Jason, it's like a cold front every night because it's getting down in the upper 40s. So,
Right.
so almost a 30-degree difference. So by 4 o'clock in the morning, I had him on some cameras, almost 3/4 of a mile away from where I killed him, but it's all still the same parcel of land. And, but I thought, man, he is on his feet, and it's that cold front, so to speak.
Right.
74 during the day, 48 at night. By 4 o'clock in the morning, they're feeling real good, and they were really moving. So I said all that to say this: just don't wait on that big cold front. Use those drops during the night.
Yeah.
Even though it's warm during the day.
The front you could need could just be one day.
And that's a morning hunt. Yeah, that's right. But that's, in this case, in those type temperatures, that's that time of year, latter, say Halloweenish, 1st of November, that you want to hunt mornings anyhow.
Yep.
When it's 78 degrees, 74 degrees, and it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon and it's still 68, 70, them guys just don't want to move early.
And,
Right.
and on those morning or on those nights where there's 30-degree drops, it might just give you that 5 extra minutes you need on that buck getting back to
It's
bed
true.
during the morning.
Yep.
If it, it's going to take longer to warm up to that 70 degrees. So,
Right.
it might just give you that little extra time that you need to get him on the ground.
Yeah, and I've always been. You guys might think I'm crazy, but if the barometric pressure is below 30, I'm not in the woods. I won't hunt.
I have to write that down.
There's a lot of
Write that note down.
And and that's like I had a wise old man told me one time. He said, never hunt out of a stand if it's raining. Your scent goes to the ground faster that way. You guys probably know that, but yeah. Very seldom will you see me in the woods if the barometric pressure is below 30.
So
They
what's
just-
your key number
They
for
just
that? Just on a rise?
30 or on a rise.
Yeah. Oh, it means a lot. There's no doubt about it.
if you listen to somebody like Mark Drury, he's one of the biggest believers in barometric pressure.
Mhm.
And it's pretty interesting too, because different times of the year, what one number is towards the beginning of the season, it's totally different at the big end of season. So if you're looking at it, if you say 30, well, it might be higher and later on in the year or
Right.
lower, vice versa. But
It's a lot of interesting stuff when it
It
comes
is.
to barometric pressures and
Mm-hmm.
weather, and there's a lot that plays in a
moon
role.
phases.
Moon
Mhm.
phases.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
I like the wind differences. Like if it's been really, really windy, and them deer, they hunker down. They're not feeding as much. And as soon as that wind lays, it's just like it's feed time.
Right.
It's move time. It's go time. Or a heavy rain, which we've talked about this a lot. Heavy rains, and them deer just do not like to move out when it's windy and
Nope.
heavy rains. And once that rain lifts, I don't care if it's scheduled to quit raining at 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock, noon, whenever, be out there
Be
Right.
out there.
and be ready.
Because if it's during the rut, that's a crucial time, because those bucks are going to be out there opening them scrapes up
Right.
after a good rain.
Now, do you guys, as far as wind goes, would you rather prefer it being dead quiet, or do you want like a 5 to 10 mile an hour wind?
I want a
'Cause
breeze.
I do
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
It's like you go in and man, it's just dead quiet. And it's
Yeah.
like they can almost hear you breathe. It's
Oh,
like
yeah.
I would almost just rather have a
Yeah.
Well-
and I really think that they're more cautious during that time
Mm-hmm.
when it's dead.
That's what I was going to
Yeah.
say.
They hear everything and they're just
I've
Just
always
got 'em
thought it
on
helps my movement too. if there's a little bit of a breeze
Oh,
blowing
yeah.
and I go to draw my bow back, or
Oh,
you know,
absolutely.
Right.
How many times have you walked up on a deer? You know, since we're on the subject, like a windy day, or I'm saying very windy day. I have walked up on mature deer and got within, you know, bow range
right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
a couple of times. I've actually harvested a few bucks that way.
Where you see these guys like, you know, out in the prairie shooting, you know, muleys or something, and they're sneaking up, and you can just hear in the microphone of the video camera just the wind just howling,
Right.
but the wind's in their face, and you know those deer, you know, the deer just bedded up right out there in the middle. But yeah, it's you can get away with a lot more with the
Not
steady
to
wind.
not to detour the path, but I kind of want to bring up what Joe was discussing here, because this has always been a yearly thing, right? There's a lot of good bucks that are harvested that Thanksgiving weekend or right up before Thanksgiving. Is that your guys' opinion? Is that due to pressure? I think a lot of us due to pressure, because it's like he said, it's a traditional hunting weekend, and I just think there's a lot of people out there.
I think it's more the downside of the peak rut. He's already bred 2, maybe 3, doubt it, and he's hoping to find that 3rd or 4th one. And
He's
he
still
is
looking.
really on his feet, and he is worldwide at that point. He may be 5 miles from where he summered. He may be 3 miles from where he was Halloween, you know, and they're really on that search for that 3rd, 4th breeding.
I got you.
Yeah.
I just kind of want to get you guys' input on that, just because I know
That's how I feel.
it's almost like there's pockets of time of the year to where, you know,
Mhm.
I agree. I mean,
a lot
yeah,
of pressure, and then
it's, you know, they're still checking, you
Right.
know, that time of the year.
Well, to go with that question we had last night on your show, Matt, about how I don't want any does, and the parcel that I start hunting on, which I will start hunting there in October sometime, I want very few does, but I want that to be that buck's home. And the buck I'm after, I haven't seen him yet, and I may not until mid October, so I'm probably not going to hunt until around Halloween anyhow. But with that said, with having very few does, it allows more buck activity behavior during the pre-rut, during the peak pre-rut. And usually what I go after that mature buck, because that's where he lives. There's only a few does there, maybe a dozen. And then once he gets to the point to where him and all the other bucks get their breeding done, I hope to have him on harvested before then, because after that, that's when he's on his Thanksgiving vacation,
right.
Mhm.
and he may be 3 miles that way.
That's
Gotcha.
very true.
So
Jason.
that's why I hunt an area with less does. I don't want any does where I'm hunting pre-rut, peak pre-rut. Now coming, you know, the 15th of November on into Thanksgiving,
you want them does.
I'm going to be where it's a doe factory. And that's just like that little green spot I put in there
Doe bedroom.
next to water with a rub branch and one of our musker oaks. It's a little bitty food plot about the size of this building of ours, 20 by 30 maybe. And bucks have to walk through that. And all I done was built that because there wasn't any browse in it. It was a fescue field. And so I put 7-card stud or whatever it was, and I throw that out there, and it's coming up. And right now I'm having anywhere from 6 to 8 different bucks on that. And they're working the rub branch, they're working the rope, they're picking a little green, getting some water. That's perfect. I don't want it to be a doe factory.
Right.
And once you get your food plots turned into a doe factory, then bucks don't want to be around all them does. The time of the year that I plan to harvest, which is around pre-rut, peak pre-rut, Halloween.
Mhm.
So
We brought that up last night, and I thought
Mhm.
we'll get a good explanation tomorrow night, because I was
That's
hoping
what-
you bring it up again.
right.
Let's see if there's any other comments or questions. Nick said he got his order in the mail today. Went and freshened his scrapes up.
Oh, good.
Gail said absolutely barometric pressure. Corey said I'm seeing mostly bucks on my property and minimal doe activity. Would that be more of a sign of buck bedding? I'm seeing 15 plus bucks and just a handful of does.
Oh my, that's a pre-rut hot spot.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, peak pre-rut, Halloween. Because you know that buck, that mature buck, wherever he has summered, he's going to come. Or I'm just speaking for my spot. He's going to come in there, and he's going to breed that doe more than likely that he bred last year,
Mhm.
if she's still alive. So that's why I talk about the predation on some of these parcels. I don't want to take my coyotes out. I seen a bobcat today on one of my cameras, and I was like, good deal. I want that, because on this parcel of land, like I noticed last year, I had about a dozen does and about 22 bucks. Now, a lot of them were little bucks. A lot of them were kicked off of parcels mile away, and they just summer there, they fall there. Then they, of course, disperse as they get older. Because it's funny, every year it's like a lot of little forkhorns, a few 2-year-olds, several 3-year-olds, and 2 or 3, 4 and above. But being that it's more bucky, it's because there's less does there.
Right.
If that parcel was a doe factory, then bucks would not be there to live there.
Right.
Now they'd come through during the rut, and yeah, there'd be some there, but I'm talking about a particular buck that I'm after.
Mm-hmm.
So, but
Yeah, if you've got a bunch, if it's Corey's, I'd say you're in a good spot. If you've got if you got all them bucks bacheloring up like that, and I mean, it's like Jason said, I mean, that's a good place.
Amos Elliott there. What's your favorite food plots to plant in the woods? Be careful. Maybe even have it hired done, but get you a chainsaw and cut you some trees down, get some daylight in there, and that'll turn into a bedding and food plot. Some guys call it hinge cutting, but open that canopy up and just let it turn into bramble. I mean, that's the best. I mean, that's going to grow the best.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's some seeds out there. You can open up an area and clean it all up. That's shade resistant, but I'm not for sure what they are, Amos. You just have to read on them.
Well, what about red moon phase? Do you guys go by moon phases?
The only moon phase, and I'm sorry if I'm talking too much, but the only
No,
moon
go for it.
the only moon phase I go by is a first day, second day, full moon.
Yeah.
And it's all about social behavior.
First and second. Yep.
And what I love about it, Landon, is it messes their feeding up to where they get all shifted, because that first full moon night, they eat all night long. They go back to bed early, and then they're up on their feet about 11 o'clock that day eating, because they're all out of whack. And,
Right.
and it takes them about 3 days to get back into order after that full moon festival they have, being social and eating all night long. Because you got to think about it, you know, deer feeding that 5 times in a 24-hour period, but you got to think about it. The dead times is midday and midnight. Midday and midnight is the dead times. It's before that, after, in that pie shape, you can kind of figure out where that feeding's taking place.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
Go ahead, guys. I'm going to muzzle myself.
No, you're good. You're good.
Talking way too much.
You're good.
No.
This is your show.
Oh, no.
Man meter.
Jason, here's a scent question for you from Joe. What scent do you use on rub branches?
I like to use the ridgetop buck and rut, and then a little later the old number 11. A little
what I
later would be
use.
sometime in October.
That's what I use.
Guys, I had a question for you. I was going to see what your guys' thoughts are. So, how many times as hunters, you know, say I killed a buck in a certain spot 15 years ago. How many times do hunters base their strategy on, say, coincidence or just, you know, happenstance? So, you know, how many times do you think guys go into the woods and say, well, I'm going to set my stand right here, because by golly, I saw a monster walk across there last year. That has to be a great
I shot a
spot.
160 there last year, and I have to hunt that stand forever.
Right.
If
right.
the
That
shoe
philosophy.
fits, wear it. You know.
Right. But
I think it happened. And honestly, I think it happens way more than it should,
Yeah.
because, I mean,
You know,
how much of it is coincidental? you
yeah,
know?
well, and I it's just something that came on me the other day, because I was like, you know, how many times have we seen a big deer running across there, and we just, you know, jump to conclusion, man, that's where I got to be.
Right.
That's where I have to be this fall.
Yep.
And so then next thing you know, you're putting the camera up there, or, you know, and then you're like, well, maybe he's, you know, maybe my camera's just not in the right spot, and then you're like, well, I'm gonna go ahead and hunt it, and then you know, next thing you know, you've devoted X amount of time into hunting the spot that you've
Right.
seen a deer once. Or maybe that you know, especially like during the rut, you know how
Oh,
how
yeah.
deer are, you know.
See them
But-
anywhere.
Yeah, but I just
I will say this: ever since I started talking to Jason and really watching his Facebook posts, kind of bragging on you here a little bit, but a lot of like stuff that I noticed that Jason does is observational stuff, and I think that's one thing a lot of hunters miss out on is, yeah, we want to go to the woods and hunt, and we want to harvest that big buck, but What are you doing in that meantime? Or are you playing on your phone? You playing video game? You know, are you watching the actual timber and seeing what's happening? And how many deer have crossed 150 yards from you that you're not even paying attention? You know, we could be scrolling through Facebook.
Right.
I'm guilty of it. I'm not saying anything
Yeah.
bad about it, but as far as like that, like being aware of your surroundings at all times and watching the woods, watching the timber, I think you can use that as a tool, a great tool.
Oh, absolutely.
One of the greatest things that I noticed last year, and I'd noticed it in the past, but I really put it all together. You know, that morning hour, that gray hour, when things are starting to wake up, and I'm talking about the chipmunks, and I'm talking about the birds and the squirrels. And you start to hear all that chitter chatter and the chirps, and it'll go all the way up till about 11 o'clock, 11:30, and it shuts off, which that's their feeding window, and they're going to bed. You wouldn't believe I got to watching as soon as that would stop, all the chirping and all the birds, and get real quiet about 11:15, 11:25. That's when that big buck, the slow walker, that's when he would enter his bed most of the time.
Wow.
And that was because everything's going to sleep.
See, it's the
Back to
little
what I
things.
said. Midday, less feeding. Midnight, less feeding.
Less feeding.
It's all about that feeding pattern. But back to what you were saying the other day or a while ago about that one spot where, man, I've got to hunt here. So when I was younger, this has been 35 years ago, the late Virgil Miller, and Gail will know who that is. Just a master old woodsman and deer hunter. And
Good man.
we was able to hunt. I was able to hunt behind his footprints, and he was not a bow hunter, and he was a gun hunter, but he killed a monster deer, 150 plus inch every year, and he killed it opening day and maybe second, third day, and he was done. And he was a surveyor, and I thought, I got to find out where he's hunting. I got to figure this out, and because we both had permission, I could just bow hunt it, and he didn't. I didn't gun hunt it because he did. I went in there and I found some orange paint on an old beech tree, and I looked down through there and I found another orange paint on a beech tree, and it led me right into the middle of about a 4-acre bramble, briar, pine tree, honeysuckle thicket in the middle of about the whole parcel is around 800 acres, but this main big parcel of big timber was probably about 300 acres. And I seen where he was. I seen where he hunted. I seen his tree stand, and I seen a scrape. I seen a rub. I hung my tree. That next morning on November 3rd, I missed the biggest deer in my life with a bow and arrow. Probably 1990 something, 1 or 2, 3 maybe, and it was 10 yards, and my knock had slipped. But I thought, Jason, that's what you deserve, getting in there, getting in there on Virgil's hot
Intruding
spot.
on his hunting
Oh
ground.
yeah, I missed that dude, and my knock slipped, arrow shot underneath of him. But I said I'd say this: if you got a spot like that, it's probably going to be a every year honey hole.
Right.
But it was so thick, I don't even see how he killed anything in it. 'Cause
Right.
That's probably why he took a gun.
That's why he only gun hunted.
Well, it's just like, how many times you see an old, wooden stand that the old timers left up in the woods, and then you get to looking at it, and you're like, I understand why.
Oh yeah.
This guy knew what
They're
he
there
was
for a
doing.
reason.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Observe.
And I think, like looking back, I think that's kind of when I kind of grew out of just I'm out there in the woods to like getting more serious about hunting, is kind of asking yourself the whys. Like, why is this happening? Like, don't take for granted that you're just out there setting to take up space. Like,
Right.
why did this deer come in right here? Why is he eating here?
Mhm.
Like, ask yourself. I feel like if you ask, the more you ask yourself why on stuff and why things are happening, you're going to be learning more and more out there, and then you're ultimately going to set yourself in a better,
Be more
position.
successful,
Right.
Right.
And that was just kind of the transition period for me, is just kind of starting to question why things are going on like they do.
Yeah. Well, you've become a more seasoned hunter too.
Right, right.
So
Yep.
Nick said, what time do you go in the woods and come out of the woods early season? I've been going 5 minutes after sunrise and coming out at 12.
Probably good. It just all depends on. I always tell myself there's that magical moment between about 5 a.m. and 7 a.m. To where things are really really positioned in a bedding area, or you can even call it a staging area heading back to bedding, you know. And that bedding area is not their destinational bedding, but things are a little slow. I mean, watch your cameras. I mean, you'll notice when they're moving the most, you know. But yeah, I like going in that gray area. How about you guys?
Mm-hmm. What
I do.
he's talking about early season, right? So what?
Yeah, I think
It says out of the woods early season.
So he's what he's saying is he's hunting early season. He's going in about he's doing morning hunts.
Yeah.
Right? I very seldom do I start hunting mornings till
right.
22nd of October.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I usually wait till the last week of October.
I've got one. With that said, I do have one piece of property that usually they have beans on, and the year that they do plant beans on them. I'll go in that first week if I'm getting good pictures, and that's usually every other year. This year is a year for that, so you know, if I hunt early season and I'm going in, I don't know, I get in there probably half hour before, you know, sunrise.
Right. This is kind of we're at 7 or 50 minutes in, but I want to hit on this. I'm not saying we're about being done. I just want to hit on this because Ryan said Jason is a wealth of knowledge and love just going to the shop and talking. All of his products have produced for me. An old number 11 is a staple in my pack. And I do want to reiterate this because I did talk about it on the last night's show. Jason and I have talked about it several times, and I've posted about it. But one of the reasons why me and Jason, and I just produce it for him, but started doing this is to teach people about hunting. Like Darren said earlier, none of us at this table are professionals.
Oh no.
And just because we do it one way doesn't mean it's the way everybody should do it. But we just want to make sure, I appreciate Ryan's comment. But we're here just as hunters and just trying to teach and learn from other people that's commenting and just have a good conversation.
Well,
so
and I
just wanted to throw that out there.
You get up my age, you get up as old as I'm old as dirt. I like to sit around and talk about whitetail deer.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And what better
I'm
way?
the same
to do
way.
it?
Yeah,
That's right.
Amen.
I say if you can find a hunting hole, stay in it. I just won't hunt over it. J.R. Leonard said that.
Yes.
You're
He
right,
always
JR.
kills a big deer. What's he talking about?
You're right, JR.
Yeah, and going back to Derek's comment, so I talked about this a little bit last on the show, and so last year Derek he was on his way to check a trail camera that he had hung, and the buck that he harvested last year was walking straight at him, and it come within like 7 yards, and he shot it on the ground with his bow. So I think
Right place.
it was right
time.
place, right time for
Yes.
sure, and he was a nice
That's
one.
happened to me before.
Yeah.
2016, I killed a pretty good, harvested a real good 9-pointer that way. He was chasing 2 does. I was actually done hunting. And anyway, long story short, I thought I'm going to go check 2 cameras.
Right.
On my way down there, I thought I'm going to go ahead and grab my bow just in case. And I walked probably 400 yards and I was about, I'm going to say 50, 60 yards from my camper. I saw him coming.
Yeah.
10 yards.
Yeah. Right place, right time.
Mm-hmm.
I got just a little topic. Had somebody ask me here recently about water hoe or water versus food plot, and which I'm talking kind of strictly on a mature deer. Mature deer to you may be a 3.5, others maybe 4 or 5, but water versus food plot. Well, that could be destinational food, a crop. That could be a food plot that you've planted, and I would go for the water before the food plot, because the way I look at that is I've just patterned so many nice deer getting out of their bed during the day and walking that 100 yards to get a drink of water, then going back in their bed. Or I've patterned a lot of nice deer, and I got one right now that I've patterned. I patterned him now for like 3 years, or he's a 4.5-year-old this year, and I call him Clockwork because if he keeps doing what he's always done, he'll start hitting that water hoe here in October every evening at the same time. And I got him on camera the other night about 12:30 in the morning. So I know he lives on another parcel about a mile away, because some friends that come in the shop that I've got acquainted with, they talk about him too. And they hope that we can let him grow up. And I said, well, last year, the 3.5, he was a nice looking deer, and he's still a nice big 8-point this year. And hopefully he can continue that pattern on that water and be able to harvest him early season, hopefully 1 year. But I say the water over the food because I look at it like this. When they really want water, and I'm not talking about water content out of green stems, grasses, whatever. I'm talking a drink. When they want that drink, especially after they've eaten acorns and briars and woody tips all day long in their bed, I will take a water over a lush green food plot any day. But it's got to be in the right spot.
Yeah,
Right.
and not to interrupt you, but it depends on the temperature. You know, weather. If it's hot, deer. I mean, I would agree with that.
Oh, I mean, I watch these deer. I mean, these big deer. And why I say big deer is because they drink more, eat more. I mean, they'll sit there and drink for 30 or 40 seconds straight, just lapping and lapping and lapping. That tells me he's thirsty.
Right.
I
Oh,
would.
yeah.
You know, he's just not taking a drink. He is drinking,
Right.
consuming a lot, and actually linger around there for a little bit. You know, I've never really seen him go back to it, but it's just like a place where it's like refreshing. You know, so
For sure. What other topics we got? Landon, you got a whole page over there, bud.
lay it on.
I don't know. I've been through. We've been
Read
through,
them all.
We've been through some of them. No, I was just gonna have Jason, Darren, whoever talk about kind of old school woodsmanship. Like I feel like today's evolution.
Well, Darren's old, so go ahead.
Yeah, you both are old. You don't want to tell who's older. No, I just feel like in today's kind of hunting world that, you know, that we kind of all just take for granted, you know, the old school woodsmanship. You know, it's easy to want to find success in, you know, a bag of this or a bottle of, you know, like that people are missing the big picture. You know, it's a lost art, I feel like. And it's something that, you know, I've learned a lot from talking with Jason over, you know, the years and stuff is just, you know, getting down to the basics.
That is a great topic. I mean, I think today with as a society, I mean, not just hunters, but everybody, we're all spoiled. We want instant gratification, but I think with the technologies that they've got now, when it comes to the tools that we use for hunting, your cameras and things like that, I'm not knocking any of that because they're good products and I use a lot of them too. But I think a lot of that has changed the mindset of some of the hunters today.
100%.
And maybe,
100%.
and not to sound discriminative, I'm not doing that, but I think a lot of it is aimed at some of the younger hunters. The best advice I could give anybody that's trying to hunt a whitetail, and I know a lot of guys my age, you know, would tell you the same thing. If you're serious about hunting deer, you got to do your homework. You can't just walk into the woods and expect to kill a 150-inch buck. You know, you might get lucky and walk in, but I'm getting sidetracked. But the thing is, you got to do your homework. Talk to some older guys. If anybody knows any older hunters, veteran hunters, if you will, talk to them, you know, get some advice off of them, you know.
Yeah.
I had my dad never hunted, never did any kind of hunting. My grandfather, I was grown up squirrel hunting. I squirrel hunted till started squirrel hunting when I was 7 years old, and I had to go. He made me. I was done squirrel hunting when I was 12. Burnt out, hated it. I tried trapping and everything, but nobody in my family actually ever deer hunted outside of me. My brother, he, you know, every now and then he would try it a little bit, but I learned off of a guy that I've known. He's still alive too. I learned a lot of things off of him, you know, as far as hunting and how to hunt properly.
Yep.
That would be the best advice that I could give anybody that wants to up their game or, you know, become a better hunter.
Yeah.
I hope that helps somebody.
No, I totally agree. And, I feel like there's so many ways, or we have so much technology these days that it is easy to get, wrapped up in that. And, it is easy to wake up every morning and look at my phone and, see what deer have hit the scrapes or whatever. And it's also easy to say, well, I'm going to go in there and hunt that. Well, that's great. But at the same time, you have to know what's really happening, in the woods. And I feel like that there's probably not as much boots on the ground as there once was, and, that might be for the better, but I don't know. It's just something that I had been thinking about, and it's kind of a lost art, as far as, guys that's really,
Well, and you look at, and again, I'm not knocking. I watch a lot of the Outdoor Channel and a lot of these hunting shows. It's all about what they film,
Right.
So going back to Landon, I'm just sorry, I'm gonna put my
No, you're fine.
2 cents in, but I think we live in a false world when it comes to the hunting industry, and and that's no knock whatsoever.
Yeah.
But it's instant fame, instant gratification, picture on poster at a trade show, or and going back to what Darren was talking about with, some of my fondest memories of even hunting is with my grandpa in the squirrel woods.
Yes, buddy.
Deer hunting and grandpa setting a stand 20 yards from him, just keep an eye on me.
Right.
But that's back before cell phones were even a thing. Social media obviously wasn't, obviously a thing. And that, to me, talking about the old woodsmanship, was true hunting, right? I mean, we have awesome resources today, and if you take advantage of them, cell cams, whatever. But just that not knowing on opening morning of shotgun season, or going into bow season and having no clue, other than if you did go do like an observation set maybe a week before, didn't take a weapon. But I think that I learned so much off of my grandpa just because of that, because that's the only knowledge you had back then was true woodsmanship,
Right.
So that's kind of my 2 cents on it, just
Yeah.
because I think sometimes we live in a false world of,
and television has turned it into a business.
Yeah. Oh,
it's
has.
an industry is
It
what
is.
it's turned
Yes.
And I worry about the perception that young kids have on the hunting industry. Like, how are we portraying the hunting industry?
Yes.
I think we have an obligation as hunters to maintain, this art, of old school woodsmanship. I feel like that's something that we kind of need to learn or teach our kids, and, make sure that they know that it's important, because, I think that you can go through and you can turn on the Outdoor Channel and you can see this guy, shoot a 200, inch buck. Well, that guy is also, that's what he does for his life, or, for his livelihood. It's not showing, it's kind of like getting on Instagram. You're not going to see the bad things that's happening with people, and all these, and all these people who are on Instagram. You're going to only get the best snippet of their life.
Well,
and it's the same way with the hunting industry. And I feel like we've kind of failed in a little bit, is that we're only showing the best. Like, nobody's showing the grit and the hard work and the backstory of, hey, I missed, I blew this guy up, 20 times before I even, I got him. So, I think we kind of have this narrative to where we just kind of, things are just, it's big deer or bust.
Yes.
And I hate that, because, it quite frankly, it's about the chase that,
Yes.
it's the best part about it. So
Jason and I had this conversation. I talked about this on my show the other night about everybody has their own goals of what they're hunting for. And if you can put the pieces of the puzzle together, I mean, I don't care if it's a 2-year-old deer, but if that's your target buck for the year and he's in there and you want to put the pieces of the puzzle together and harvest him, kudos to you. I mean,
it gets you excited.
For figuring it out and knowing where he's at. And I mean, there's a lot to it.
Well, that's like last year. I was going live before I entered the woods, or while I was entering the woods, and then after the hunt. And, it was just being real, I seen this, seen that, didn't see who I wanted to see. But you still pursue.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like you guys are saying, they only show you the high times.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of reality to it, that people, they watch only the high times. They go to the woods to pursue this, and it's all low.
Right.
Well, I find a lot of good times in the low. you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
for sure.
I really do. And when we're teaching our younger kids, it's got to be the high time or it's not worth the time.
Right.
And that's not what it's all about.
Here's something kind of crazy too. Is like kind of old school feel, but Jason had that seminar a couple years ago out here in your yard or whatever, and he had this notebook laying out that had just old pictures of like Jason trapping back in the day, and like you just look at these pictures, and I didn't even know Jason 20 years ago, but just looking at pictures of the fur and just thoughts start running through your mind of like what it was like, just true woodsmanship and just stuff like that. Just gives me chills of the true, the hard way.
Jason, didn't your dad, didn't he hunt?
No,
he didn't.
No, I believe God makes hunters and gatherers, and I was a hunter.
He's a hunter.
Well, who did you hunt? Your
But I do like
grandfather?
to garden.
Your grandfather?
No,
No.
Mm-mm.
Just kind of taught yourself.
Yeah, self-taught.
That's
Self-taught
kind of
to
the way I
trap
did
and
it,
hunt.
as far as deer.
But did
I
you
went-
started trapping though, right?
Yeah, when I was little, I did. About 10 years old when I started trapping. But like the deer hunting, Dad did take us to a friend's property in Orange County during gun season.
I got you.
But before all that, back in the early 80s when I got my first bow, we just hunted around cornfields around the house.
I got you.
Mhm.
And man, we shot everything from a red squirrel to a red fox.
Whatever it was.
What is it? It was exciting. wasn't it?
Everything
Yeah,
within
absolutely.
season. It was all hunting.
Isn't it
It's
great?
awesome.
But
It's
yeah.
great.
But yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. It's getting into latter September. We're getting into that point where these bucks are starting to transition. Search these cool nights. Told somebody there the other day. They was asking when they thought some of my target bucks would transition, and I'm actually looking on my phone right now to see if it's tonight, but not yet. But anyhow, these cool nights. Some of these bucks may be 2 or 3 miles away from where they're going to end up. This is when they're going to travel. They're going to travel these cool nights and these cool evenings. And, it may take them a day or two to bounce it to get there, but I'm hoping any day now going into October here, I'll start seeing some of the deer them after. So
Ryan Ray said you're still a gatherer. He is, Ryan. He's still a gatherer.
still a gather.
I got something I want to bring up, and this is kind of directed towards Landon and Jason and Darren. I mean, you can chime in too. One big thing as far as habitat. One big thing is transition between the years of corn and beans. Okay, so like this year we have beans next to the farm we hunt. Now there's no crop ground out on the actual property we hunt; it's just next to it.
Mhm.
We see a big difference between bean and corn. I kind of know what but like from your guys' standpoint, if you're hunting a piece of property, you have no crops, no standing crops, but what's around you, does that dictate how you hunt, where you hunt? Because I know beans are very, especially when they're lush and green, depending on rainfall and that right now a lot of them's dry. I mean, the
Right.
leaves have already fell off of them, but
Landon's the farmer deer hunter. And I'll let him
that's kind of what I want to
answer-
bring up to
I'll let-
Landon from a
I'll let him
farming
answer
standpoint.
that, but to me, it's just all in that habitat change. And when that habitat changes, them deer shift and change as well.
Yep.
They still got to have some green of some sort for that water content,
Thickets.
or just for the diet. Because these whitetail, they're not like a cow. They say farmers say like a cow, and you can watch it. They got big old bellies on them, and man, I mean he's the cattle man and the row cropper. He should be the one talking here. But these cows, they just eat all day long.
Mm-hmm.
And, you get these bucks and does, they just eat real fast in increments. And then they go bed down and digest it, So a lot of what Landon's probably getting ready to talk about has to do with just that lush, high protein beans in the summer. And Landon, I'll let you take over from here.
No, I agree with Jason there. And I think as far as what you're seeing on, why a lot of guys in some years will see, more deer than others based on the rotation is, deer spend more time in standing corn than any of us can probably ever imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't know how many times that, I've had a field that's been in corn, and then it's like all of a sudden, a big buck will show up and you're like, wow, where did he come from?
But when is that? At what stage of the corn?
I feel like that they like, I think they position themselves in the corn to where it's to their benefit. But I feel like that they spend more time in the corn throughout the growing season.
Well,
For me,
yeah, they're hit.
I mean, I'm sure it's all, I think a lot of it is circumstance too. If you have a buck that has great bedding that's right here, and he can hop over in his bedding, I'm sure he's going to take that. But if you have a buck that hey, I've got to travel a ways, to get back to good bedding, I think a lot of times they'll camp out right there.
Well, I know one thing for sure.
Absolutely.
We see less deer while the corn is next to us and it's up.
Yeah.
Than like this year's beans, and I've got awesome pictures. But when it's corn,
and that's what I would correlate it with. It's just that
because it's awesome cover. I mean, how do you when you go stand in the cornfield and
Well,
you
they
feel like
bed-
you're hit
they
from
bed in
everything.
it.
Yeah.
I found a lot of beds in standing corn. When it's green. I mean,
I just kind of want to bring that up.
That's
crop rotation.
That's great because crop and crop rotation. It affects movement because as far as deer, the way deer travel too. A deer really likes to walk along the edge of, like, if you have a field edge that has corn and then they leave a little bit space and say where they did burn down, and you have some nice easy travel between that and the edge of the woods. I mean, they like that edge. I mean, they'll burn it up,
right?
And you might not have corn for 6 rows in, but
the deer love it.
Yeah, they do.
I wanted to just, I know we're over an hour probably, but I'm going to talk real briefly on a lot of guys are worried about spooking their deer, and I know it's different on different parcels, but for like say a private parcel that I hunt that's 400 acres, if I go in there and I bump something around, because me and Landon, we've been going into these buck beddings last week or so, just shaking in our pants the whole time we're in there, just worried to death. But I honestly feel like you get into this buck habitat and these bedding areas, set up a camera or whatever. If it's an area where it's not pressured and it's a nice size landscape, and if you do bump a deer, I think you're going to be okay a lot of the times. Now, if you're going in there on 4-wheelers and side by sides and you're in there all the time, and you're hanging tree stands and you're moving cameras and just constantly just bumping and pushing and shoving, a lot of times they may leave that type of parcel, but I think a lot of times too, it's a 50-50 game. They'll stay there. They'll just transition to a different bedding area.
So can I add to this real quick?
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on do deer get used to landowners? If I got
ask Landon,
if I got 80 acres,
yeah,
and I'm I run a few cattle, I cut my firewood,
right,
but I don't hunt, I don't pressure these deer other than my little tractor be bopping down the logging road, cutting up and then leaving.
But if you think about a farmer, and Landon is a farmer, he does the same thing. It's ritual. It's seasonal,
right?
And they're doing it the same time almost every year, or the same time every day. And it's on a tractor. And I've heard, I like my brother the other day. He said, "Yeah, I had to go in," and he said I had to take my 4-wheeler. He said, "But I kept my 4-wheeler running the whole time." And that goes back to the farmer. He never shuts his tractor off.
No,
they're conditioned. I mean, really. I mean, deer get conditioned stuff, and you can listen to people all the time, and they'll say the same thing. Like, "Hey, I went and picked so and so up with the Ranger or tractor. I took the tractor out and picked up my brother from the stand or whatever."
Right.
Cool. But like, case in point, like, how many times have you seen? And I've seen it because I got one close to me, like a shooting preserve where they're shooting clay pigeons and birds or whatever. And you look over and there's a deer standing right there.
Not a care in the world.
They're just so conditioned to gunshots and getting peppered with bird shots.
Yeah.
They don't even care.
I wanted to bring that aspect up for the viewers. Yeah. I know we see it a lot where the other day the landowner had actually just drove his tractor. The pictures I showed last night on the show, all those bucks was on that logging road where he just drove his tractor down through there.
Exactly what I was thinking. How many times have you been on a tractor, bush hog, whatever you were doing?
Or a doe will run like 20 yards, stop and just stare at you the whole time.
Well, it happens a lot.
Or how many times I'll be in the or my dad will be in the combine, I'll be in the grain cart, and I sit there and watch deer. I'm like, man, like, if it was legal, a guy could shoot a lot of deer
Oh, yeah.
from a combine. Like, I
But
mean,
they're
really,
used to it.
they'll
They-
come out and they'll just, of course, they
Yeah.
like fresh picked corn and stuff like that. But still, I mean, they're just so used to it that, you know, it's just,
Conditioned is a good
Conditioned.
word.
Yep.
I like it.
but
That's good info.
but what the breaking point is, I don't know, and who does know? You know,
Yeah,
how often do you have to drive past a deer with a tractor before they get?
I don't know
used
if I
to it?
want to gamble
Well,
on that.
I think about a lot of which I don't hunt public. I mean, I used to back in the day for turkey and stuff, but I think a lot of these guys, that's all they've got to hunt is public.
Mhm.
And you know, you got your turkey season, but you got from like June, July, August, September, and man, these deer are just free.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden, October 1st, I mean, here they come.
Floodgates.
I mean, it's just, yeah, it's got to disturb them. But
Right.
I don't think it'll totally push them around. I just think they spend more time just moving around.
Yeah,
a
that's
lot
I
of times.
agree. I agree with
But
that.
they get so cautious, and this whole nocturnal, not nocturnal. I don't believe a deer's nocturnal. I believe he's got to get up and move. He may not move very far in a social area. That's like what I like calling like a little buck circle or a buck bubble. He you know, and he's going to move around, and he may walk 2 miles in the area the size of a football field.
Right.
But if he can get it, he's got his cover, he's got his food, and he'll get up and move around during the day. But I don't think there's a deer that's actually nocturnal. And another thing guys need to think about, if you say, oh, I don't see him on my camera till way after dark, well, probably because he's not even on your parcel.
Right.
You know, they're just coming in.
He's
there.
somewhere else.
He's got to
Yeah.
be somewhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's somewhere. And that's just the same thing with what like scrapes. That's like I like running these mock scrapes and these vines and these ropes and these rub branches. All I'm doing mainly is building a center hub for that deer when he finally gets older.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? Because there is that mature buck scrape out there somewhere. He likes it.
Oh,
He
yeah.
checks it, you
Yeah.
know.
Right here's a picture of one of Jason's ropes, and this is just like this is a prime example. This is not a video we wanted to use for, you know, the communication part of it, but these ropes, all he's going to do is rub his forehead on this rope, and it's kind of like a payphone kind of thing.
There
I
you
mean, pretty
go.
much like he's just rubbing his scent on there, and then you know
Mhm.
it's just a communication spot.
Yeah, I don't want to get into the next podcast, but
We'll give him a preview, Jason. How about that?
On a lot of my ropes, I like to enhance it with a pine branch on it, and I usually just zip tie that. That way, with this floral, they're very attracted to that. But then all of these little needles, they can really disperse the gland secretions, periorbital musk gland, and they just like it.
Mhm.
And especially if you're in an area where there's not a whole lot of pine or cedar or hemlock, you know, add that to your rope. Oak is good, beech is good because they hold their leaves even after they're cut and they dry up. And that's what they're after, is to be able to leave it behind. And just for the product side of things, the main reason I went to the rope is 2 reasons. One, I can ship them easier than a vine. And then I shipped one to a guy, and I was like, man, this thing's gonna look like a reef when it gets to you.
Did you
And
ship a vine?
I did last
you rolled
year.
it
and I
up and
thought-
shipped it.
Yeah, and I'm never going to do that again. So I went to the rope, which the rope is fine because I like the rope because a lot of my vines, you got to replace them all the time because they get broken.
Right.
And that rope, but I do like to enhance them a little bit, which that buck picture you showed, he didn't have anything on that. That was a customer. So
Yeah, and some of that rope you have to be cautious with because they treat it or whatever. I know you
Yeah.
said that you'd had trouble, you know.
yeah, a lot of your hemp is used around marinas and docks, and so they'll go ahead and treat it with a water repellent. I told somebody today, I said, yeah, because he's going to buy him some rope. I said, well, don't buy treated hemp rope. I said, because it smells something like diesel fuel and lacquer thinner.
That ain't good.
Yeah.
That ain't good.
So,
You're right.
anyhow.
It does have that odor.
Well,
Do you guys have anything else you want to discuss tonight, or
I don't want to get into the next one. So we'll just, if you guys are good, I'm good.
I'm
Yeah.
good.
I think
Go ahead.
no, I don't know. I don't know if I'll be able to get back on here again this season or not
I hope
based on
so.
my schedule. But no, it's been fun. I just hope everybody, if I don't get to talk with everybody again before season, just enjoy the chase. Don't get so much caught up on the critter as just doing what we all like to do. We the world's crazy enough. We just need to make sure we get out there and enjoy some.
Enjoy every
That's
minute
right.
of it.
It's
right.
we don't get very many days in the year to go do this. So
And
just
hunt when you want to hunt.
Yeah.
Don't hunt the way I hunt. Just hunt when
Right.
you want to hunt.
Hunt the way it makes you happy.
Exactly.
be your own hunter.
Be your own hunter and get out there and enjoy it.
I do want to show this before we get off here. Jason's new website is VanMeterandSonLures.com. Get on there and check out all of his scents and put your order in. Okay. So if you get a rush of orders after this show,
All right.
not
Yeah.
my fault.
There you go.
But we're not shipping binds. So
Reese,
order
no Reese.
no Reese.
and
Order the rope.
you tell them about your show next. It's gonna be next.
Yeah,
Wednesday.
next Monday night, Who's Your Hardwoods Live. We'll be back on the Who's Your Hardwoods Outdoors Facebook page and the Who's Your Hardwoods Outdoors YouTube channel.
And
So
we will probably be going every other week.
yeah, this show, well, we discuss every other week. So Jason and I will make sure we put out plenty of advertisements before the next show, but it would probably definitely be 2 weeks from tonight for sure. Every
Ryan,
other week.
I always try to share that too. You know, people that are my friends.
Appreciate
and
it.
Follow me on Facebook. I always try to share both of them. So.
Ryan Ray there. He said trapping fills the void. What did he say? Trapping
Fills the void.
between deer hunts. Oh, great show, guys. Ryan Ray, he's our trapper. He promotes our lures. He's from up around Hobart, Indiana. Fantastic trapper. He's a woodsman, and he kills big deer too. I mean,
Yeah,
he
he's
just,
all over it.
It just wears me out.
I love watching Ryan's Facebook page, especially like during shed season, because he goes on his lunch break and he'll find 3 or 4 sheds on his lunch break, and I think it's just awesome.
Or he'll catch 3, 4, 5 pound bass on his lunch
On
break
his lunch break, yeah.
in a swamp somewhere, and then. But we're gonna have a special gallery there about Ryan on our website.
Yep.
It's in process of being built now. So once y'all get on the website, dig around. I know this show here will be on there, I believe, and then it'll be on our YouTube page as well, channel. So and Facebook page.
Excited about it. So
All right. I appreciate everybody.
Yep.
Appreciate all the orders. Appreciate you guys coming out. Appreciate you, Matt, the producing.
thanks for letting me do it.
Yeah, good being
I have a good
Been
time.
fun.
So
Good talks.
Yeah.
All right. Enjoy, guys.
we will see you all in 2 weeks.